Wesley, come on, we're already late. Elijah Kane jogged across the cracked pavement of Brookhaven Elementary's drop-off loop, his hand tight around his son's. His worn sneakers slapped the ground, hoodie pulled over his head against the chill morning air. His breath came fast not from the run, but from the constant weight of a life that never let up. Wesley, 5 years old and dragging his dinosaur backpack behind him, huffed. "Dad, you forgot my lunch again." Elijah froze mid-step. "No, he checked his bag. Empty? Okay. You'll eat from the cafeteria today, I'll call them. You said it's gross." "I was wrong, it's gourmet." He forced a grin, crouching to straighten Wesley's jacket. "Okay, bud, you got this. Make today yours." Wesley nodded and ran ahead toward the front doors, his curls bouncing with each step. Elijah exhaled, standing back up, and nearly collided with a woman stepping out of a sleek black SUV parked next to the curb. Her heels clicked on the pavement, her dark sunglasses hiding her eyes, and her coat looked like it belonged in a Manhattan fashion spread. "Sorry," Elijah muttered, stepping aside. She smiled. "No worries, that little one yours." "Yeah," he said, watching Wesley disappear into the school. "Yours too, MHM. That's my daughter, Willow, kindergarten." She pointed to a little girl with a purple bow in her hair. "Same class as Wesley," Elijah said. "Small world," she said, lowering her sunglasses. Her eyes were warm, brown, and curious. "I'm Aurora Niles." "Elijah Kane," he added, brushing his hand on his jeans before offering it. "Nice to meet you." Her shake was gentle but confident. "You new around here? Been here 2 years. Still feels new." She nodded, then glanced at her watch. "I've got to run, but maybe I'll see you again." "Yeah," Elijah said, stepping back as she slid into her SUV. "Maybe." He turned to leave, trying to ignore how out of place he felt next to someone like her. Her car probably cost more than his apartment, and her designer coat, definitely worth more than what he made in 2 months. Still, she'd smiled at him. The next morning, she was there again. And the next, and the next. "Wesley told me Willow said your place has a raccoon living in the ceiling," Aurora asked one morning, raising a brow. Elijah laughed. "Not in the ceiling, it was on the roof, I think, scratching sounds." "I just told him that to make him think it was exciting." Aurora laughed too, a soft sound. "You're brave. I'd have called animal control and moved to another state." "Can't afford a different state," Elijah joked. She tilted her head. "You work nearby." "Yeah, dishwasher at La Rosa, nights." "I also drive for rideshare in the mornings. It's a juggle." Aurora's eyes softened. "That's a lot." "Yeah, well, you do what you gotta do." "And Wesley's mom?" Elijah paused, then exhaled. "She left when he was 2, no calls, no postcards, just gone." Aurora looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. Instead, she looked down at her hands, then smiled. "Well, Wesley's lucky to have you. He's a great kid." "Thanks." Elijah looked at her. "What about you? What do you do?" She hesitated. "I work in finance," she said simply. "Oh. Like accounting?" "Something like that." He didn't push. He figured she was probably some mid-level executive at a bank or something. She had that polished, calm air, definitely didn't seem like someone who'd ever had to count change at a gas station. A week later, Elijah found himself standing outside the school again, this time with coffee in his hand. "I thought you might need a pick-me-up," he said as Aurora approached. She blinked, surprised. "You got me coffee, you've been nice, it's the least I could do." She took it, smiling. "Thank you, you didn't have to." "I wanted to, and I remembered you said vanilla last week." "You remembered," he shrugged. "I pay attention." Aurora looked at him for a long second. "You know, I've been wanting to ask, would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime? No kids." "Just us?" Elijah stared. "Wait, you're asking me out? Unless I read this wrong and you're married or secretly allergic to pasta," he laughed. "I'm definitely not married and I love pasta. Great, Saturday," he nodded slowly, heart thumping. "Yeah, okay." Saturday. The restaurant she picked was a small Italian place in Westwood. Elijah had never been there before, probably because the valet alone made his wallet nervous. But when he stepped inside and saw Aurora in a wine-colored dress that hugged her body like it was made for her, he forgot about everything else. She stood when he approached, her eyes lighting up. "You clean up well." Elijah smiled, tugging at his only collared shirt. "You look." Wow, dinner was easy. They talked about everything, how he used to want to be a chef before life happened, how she loved the piano but hadn't played in years. They laughed. A lot. And somewhere between the second glass of wine and the shared tiramisu, something shifted. "I like being around you," Aurora said quietly, looking at him over the flickering candle. "I like being around you too," Elijah replied, voice low. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. And just like that, he was falling. He walked her to her car, heart racing. "This is me," she said, stopping in front of the black SUV. "Of course it is," he teased. "What does that mean?" "Nothing, just, it suits you." She leaned in, brushing her lips lightly against his cheek. "You suit me too, Elijah," he swallowed hard. "You sure about that?" "Absolutely," he touched her hand. "I've got some rough edges, Aurora. I'm not exactly polished. Maybe I'm tired of polished," he smiled, head spinning. "Then yeah, I'd like to see you again. Good, because I'm not done falling for you yet." He froze. "Falling?" She stepped closer, her voice low. "I've been falling for a while now," and before he could stop himself, he kissed her. It was soft, real, like something he hadn't felt in years, and in that moment he knew this wasn't just a school drop-off crush, he was falling too. Elijah hadn't planned on seeing her again so soon. It was Tuesday morning when he stepped out of his apartment into the fog of early dawn, Wesley bundled in his oversized coat, holding a cardboard robot he'd made from cereal boxes. They were halfway to the car when Elijah spotted the familiar black SUV parked along the curb. Aurora stood beside it, her coat belted tight and cheeks flushed from the cold. She was too put together for 6:40 in the morning, and the way she looked at him made his pulse skip. "I was hoping I'd catch you," she said, walking over. Elijah paused, opening the car door for Wesley before turning to her. "Everything okay? I made extra breakfast this morning," she said, lifting a small paper bag. "Thought you might want it," he blinked. "You brought me food," she laughed. "Don't look so shocked. It's just a kvass and some fruit. That's still more than I usually get before noon." "Well, then consider it a temporary upgrade." He took the bag, their fingers brushing. "Thanks. I'm not used to being looked after." Aurora glanced toward the back seat where Wesley was humming to himself, kicking his boots against the floor mat. "You take care of everyone else. Someone should take care of you." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, tucking the bag under his arm. "Do you have plans tonight?" she asked. "I've got a shift till midnight." "What about after?" He raised an eyebrow. "You planning something?" "I thought maybe you could come by," she said, her voice soft. "After work. Just for a bit, I'll be up." He hesitated. "You sure?" "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't." He glanced back at Wesley, then turned to her. "All right." "After midnight," she smiled, stepping back toward her SUV. "I'll leave the gate open." Later that night, after the restaurant's kitchen had closed and the last stack of dishes was dried, Elijah drove through quiet streets, his hands still smelling faintly of garlic and soap. He pulled into the long, tree-lined driveway Aurora had described and immediately noticed the change in scenery. Stone pillars flanked the gate. The house beyond was massive 3 stories of glass and clean angles, all lit up like a magazine cover. Landscaped paths curved around trimmed hedges. The front door alone looked like it belonged to a hotel in Monaco. He parked at the edge of the circular drive, suddenly hyper-aware of his wrinkled hoodie and the dried grease on his jeans. But before he could second-guess himself, the door opened. Aurora stood in the entryway barefoot, wearing a charcoal gray sweater that fell off one shoulder and soft-looking pants. She looked different here, less composed, more real. "You found it." She stepped aside to let him in. He wiped his shoes on the mat. "I almost didn't." "This place could be a museum." She tilted her head. "You don't like it." "I didn't say that. Just wasn't expecting it." Aurora led him through a sunken living room with floor-to-ceiling windows and into a kitchen that gleamed like a showroom. She poured him tea without asking, placing the cup in front of him at the island. He stared at the marble countertop, then at the brass fixtures. "You said you were in finance," he said slowly. "I'm starting to think that's an understatement." She leaned against the counter. "You're not wrong. Care to explain?" "I own a firm," she said after a moment. "We handle corporate transitions, equity management, that kind of thing. My father started it. I took over 5 years ago." Elijah nodded slowly. "So, you're not just doing okay. You're doing more than okay." "I didn't want that to change how you saw me." He looked at her, eyes steady. Why would it? Because most people see the house and the car and they assume I'm cold or entitled or waiting for someone with a matching tax bracket. Do I look like someone with a tax bracket? She smiled. No. You look like someone who knows what it means to work for everything he has. He blew on his tea. You're not wrong. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the quiet ticking of a clock somewhere in the background. You're not mad I didn't tell you sooner, she asked. I'm not mad. I just didn't expect any of this. I didn't either, she said softly. I didn't expect you. He met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. Then he glanced around the kitchen. So what's it like living in something this pristine? Honestly, she said. A little lonely. He looked at her, surprised. There's always someone around, she added. A driver, a housekeeper, but none of it matters when you wake up and the house is still quiet. He sipped his tea. I know what that's like, but in reverse. How do you mean, my place is loud? Always something creaking or leaking, but it still feels empty sometimes. Aurora stepped closer, her voice low. Does it feel empty now? He looked at her for a long moment. Not even a little. She reached for his hand, her fingers curling around his. Then maybe you should stay a little longer. He didn't answer. He just leaned in. This kiss wasn't like the first. It was deeper, unhurried, like a door opening instead of just being knocked on. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. You're not what I expected either, Elijah Kane. I'll take that as a good thing. It is. He stayed until almost 3, curled up beside her on a long velvet couch, both of them half asleep, her head on his shoulder. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the door. He turned on the threshold. You know this thing between us, it's not going to be simple. I don't want simple, she whispered. I want real. He kissed her again, softer this time. Then you've got it. She watched him pull away down the drive, the red glow of his taillights disappearing into the dark. Inside, her phone buzzed on the counter. She ignored it, because for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about business or balance sheets or board meetings. She was thinking about a man with calloused hands who made her feel like the world was full of possibilities she hadn't dared to hope for in far too long. By the time Thursday rolled around, Elijah was running on fumes. After pulling 3 double shifts between the restaurant and rideshare pickups, he hadn't had more than 4 hours of sleep in 2 days. But when Aurora called and asked if he and Wesley wanted to join her and Willow for a weekend picnic in the park, he didn't hesitate. Saturday afternoon was crisp, the kind of weather that made it feel like the world had paused just long enough to breathe. Elijah pushed Wesley on the swings while Aurora spread a blanket on the grass beneath the tall oak trees. Willow chased leaves nearby, her laughter floating through the air like music. You always this good with kids? Aurora asked when Elijah joined her. He settled beside her, stretching his legs out. I've had 5 years of practice. She passed him a sandwich wrapped in parchment. Still. You're a natural. He took a bite, surprised by how fresh the bread was. This is good. Did you make it? I did. Don't look so shocked. I'm not. Just impressed. You don't strike me as the make-your-own-lunches type. She raised an eyebrow. And what type do I strike you as? He paused. The kind who usually has someone else do the cooking. She laughed softly. I used to, but I've been trying to do more myself lately. Why? Because it's easy to forget what real life looks like when everything's handed to you. Elijah studied her. You don't talk like someone who lives in a house with heated floors. And you don't talk like someone who's had to carry the weight of the world on his back. He leaned back on his hands, watching Wesley and Willow race each other across the grass. What about Willow's dad? Is he in the picture? Aurora's expression tightened just briefly. No, he left before she was born. He didn't want the responsibility. I'm sorry, I'm not. I found out who he really was before it cost me more than time. They sat in silence for a moment, the breeze tugging gently at Aurora's hair. I don't think I ever asked, she said, turning to him. What did you want to do before everything changed? Elijah looked toward the sky. I wanted to open a food truck, not fancy, just real food. Sandwiches, soups, the kind of stuff people remember after a long day. Why haven't you? He gave a dry laugh. Because dreams cost more than rent, and I've got a kid who needs clean clothes and school supplies. Aurora didn't respond right away. Then she said, I meant it when I said I like being around you. He turned to face her. Even if I'm not shiny, you're the most grounded thing in my life right now." He searched her face, unsure of how to respond. Instead, he reached for her hand. "You sure you're ready for all the chaos that comes with me? I think I've been living in a bubble too long. Maybe I need a little chaos." They sat that way for a while, hands entwined, watching the kids roll down the hill in fits of laughter. Later that night, after Wesley had passed out on the couch in his superhero pajamas, Elijah pulled out the small notepad he kept tucked in the drawer under his keys. It was filled with scribbled recipes, food truck names he'd brainstormed, and sketches of menus he'd doodled during late-night shifts. He stared at one page in particular, an old layout he'd once drawn for a truck he dreamed of naming the Daily Griddle. He hadn't looked at it in over a year. Just as he was about to close the notebook, there was a gentle knock at the door. He opened it to find Aurora holding a book tucked under her arm. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "And I was in the neighborhood." He stepped aside, motioning her in. "Wesley's out." Couch claimed him. She glanced at the boy, then set the book on the counter. "I brought you something." He picked it up. It was an old hardcover, the spine worn, the flavor atlas. It's my favorite cookbook. Not because of the recipes, but because of how it talks about food like it's storytelling. He turned a page, running his thumb over a recipe for spiced lentil stew. "This looks amazing. I thought you might get some ideas. I haven't even thought about starting anything in years. Maybe it's time to start again." He looked at her, not the book. "You really believe in me that much? I wouldn't be here if I didn't." She stepped closer, brushing her fingers lightly down his arm. "You make me feel things I didn't even realize I'd shut off." He swallowed. "Like what?" "Like I don't have to be perfect all the time. Like someone sees the real me." He set the book down. "I see you, Aurora." She tilted her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then kiss me like you mean it." He did. This kiss wasn't tentative or questioning. It was the kind that said everything the words couldn't, that he was scared, that he was hopeful, that he was already in too deep. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I want more of this," she whispered. "So do I." She stepped back reluctantly. "I should go, but I'll see you tomorrow." "Yeah. Tomorrow." He watched her leave, the scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway long after the door clicked shut. Elijah turned back to the sleeping form of his son, then to the worn notebook still open on the counter. Maybe it was time to rewrite the story he thought he'd forgotten how to tell. The first snow of the season drifted down in soft spirals as Elijah walked beside Aurora through the bustling winter market that had taken over the town square. String lights glowed above them, casting a golden shimmer over bundled-up families and wooden stalls filled with warm pastries, handmade candles, and thick scarves. Willow and Wesley ran ahead, their laughter trailing behind them, cheeks red from the cold. Aurora glanced sideways, her gloved hand brushing his. "I haven't done this in years." "What, a market?" Elijah asked, nudging her gently with his shoulder. "No, walked around without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Letting the day unfold without trying to control it." He gestured to the cinnamon roll in her other hand. "I'd say you're doing pretty well for a control freak." She smiled, but there was something hesitant in it. "There's something I've been thinking about. Something I want to show you." He stopped walking. "Right now," she nodded, "if you're willing." They called the kids back and walked to her SUV. Aurora typed an address into the GPS, and soon they were heading toward the city's industrial district, where old warehouses had been converted into creative spaces and cafes. They pulled into a gated lot beside a tall brick building with frosted windows and a large metal door. Aurora punched in a code and led them into a space that was unexpectedly warm inside. Long pendant lights hung above rustic wooden floors, and sleek black counters wrapped around a spacious open kitchen. Elijah blinked. "Where are we?" Her voice was quieter now. "This used to be a test kitchen. It's been vacant for over a year." He turned in a slow circle, taking in the polished surfaces, the double ovens, the walk-in cooler. "Why are we here?" "Because I bought it," she said, watching his reaction carefully. "Last month. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew I couldn't stop thinking about what you said in the park." He stared at her. "Aurora, I'm not handing you anything," she said quickly. "But I want to invest in something real, something that matters. You, your dream." He shook his head, his voice tight. I can't let you do that. You're not letting me do anything. I'm asking you to do this with me. He turned away, running a hand down his face. This isn't just a food truck, it's a whole building. I know, but it doesn't have to start big. We can scale it. You can run pop-up dinners. Weekend service. Take your time, build it your way. He met her eyes. Why are you doing this? Because you reminded me what it feels like to believe in something without a guarantee. Because I want to build something with you, not just watch from the sidelines. He looked around again, overwhelmed. This would change everything. Good. Because you deserve a life that doesn't just happen to you. He stepped closer, the air between them pulsing with something deeper than gratitude. What if it falls apart? Then we rebuild it together. He reached for her hand. This is more than I've ever let myself want. Then let yourself have it. He leaned in, kissed her slow and grounding, the kind that said thank you and I'm terrified and I'm ready all at once. Later that evening, back at Aurora's home, Willow and Wesley curled up together on a pile of blankets in the Meteor room, watching a holiday movie while Aurora and Elijah sat on the balcony outside her bedroom, wrapped in a thick quilt and sipping cider from ceramic mugs. He watched his breath fog in the cold air before turning to her. I've been thinking about your question. What question? You asked me once what I wanted to do before everything changed. I told you about the food truck, but I didn't tell you the rest. She set her mug down. Tell me now. I wanted a family. A real one, not just me surviving with a kid. I wanted Sunday dinners, laughing over burnt pancakes, falling asleep on the couch with someone who makes the world feel less heavy. Her hand slid into his. Is that still what you want? He looked at her, eyes steady. It is, and when I picture it now, it's not just some blurry hope. It's you. She blinked, her voice smaller than usual. You mean that? I do. She tightened her grip. I've never been someone who lets people in easily. But with you, it doesn't feel like letting someone in. It feels like coming alive. The next morning, they told the kids together about the new space, about the dream they were building. Wesley's eyes lit up when Elijah said they'd be cooking together, and Willow immediately asked if she could decorate the menus. In the weeks that followed, Elijah worked with contractors to outfit the space, while Aurora handled the permits and licensing. They named it Hearth and Hand, a nod to both warmth and partnership. On the soft opening night, the room was filled with neighbors, teachers, single parents. Elijah had met through the school, all of them eating food he'd once only imagined serving. As the last table cleared and the lights dimmed, Elijah stood in the center of the room, apron dusted in flour, Aurora leaning against a counter beside him. You did it, she said. He shook his head. We did. She pulled a folded envelope from her coat and handed it to him. What's this? Open it. Inside was a deed. His name was listed first. He looked up, shocked. I thought we were partners. We are, but I wanted you to have something that's yours, not borrowed, not dependent on me. Something you earned. I can't, you already did. He folded the paper slowly, then looked at her with something close to awe. I love you, he said. She smiled, the kind that reached all the way to her eyes. I love you too. They locked the doors together, walked out into the night, and as the snow began to fall again, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Beside them, Wesley and Willow chased each other up the sidewalk, their laughter echoing through the quiet street. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real, and it was theirs. Elijah stood in front of the mirror in the tiny back office of Hearth and Hand, adjusting the cuffs of his newly pressed shirt. The grand opening was only an hour away, and though the soft launch had been a success, tonight felt different, bigger. Every reservation had been filled within a week. The local paper had done a feature. Even a food blogger with a national following had called to say she'd be attending. But none of that made his hands shake. It was the note he'd found tucked into his prep binder that morning. In Aurora's handwriting, proud doesn't begin to cover it. Tonight we celebrate more than a restaurant. We celebrate you. He tucked the note into his wallet before heading out into the warm glow of the dining room, where candles flickered, and the scent of rosemary and charred lemon drifted from the open kitchen. Wesley was helping fold napkins at the hostess stand beside Willow, both of them dressed in tiny black aprons with their names stitched in gold. Dad, Wesley called, holding up a menu. I fixed the spelling on the soup. You forgot the second tea in butternut, Elijah laughed. Good catch, chef. Across the room, Aurora was adjusting a vase of winter peonies at table 7. Her dress was a deep slate blue, elegant and understated, and her hair was pulled into a loose twist at her nape. When she caught him looking, she didn't smile, she beamed, and it hit him in the chest like it always did. As the evening unfolded, Elijah moved through the kitchen like a conductor, calling orders, plating with precision, checking on guests. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but his center never shifted. Aurora was always in his periphery, weaving between tables, answering questions with grace, her presence grounding him. After the last table had been cleared and the final dessert, a caramelized apple tart with thyme cream, served, Aurora slipped into the kitchen, her heels quiet on the tile. She leaned against the counter beside him, arms crossed. You know, I've been to a lot of openings. None of them felt like this. He wiped his hands on a towel, glancing at her. Like what? Like something sacred. He leaned in, brushing her temple with his lips. You made it possible. She tilted her head. You made it real. As the staff finished cleaning and the last guests trickled out, Elijah walked her out under the marquee lights. Snow had begun to fall again, this time softer, like the sky had remembered how to dream. I've been thinking, Aurora said, slipping her hand into his as they walked toward the waiting car. I want to restructure the firm, delegate more, create space. Space for what? For us. For this. I don't want to miss any more of it. He stopped walking, pulling her to face him. Are you sure? You've built that company from the ground up. I'm not walking away from it. I'm just no longer letting it consume me. I want mornings that start with pancakes and kids fighting over syrup. I want weekends where we close the restaurant and go hiking. I want a life with you, not just moments. He touched her cheek, his voice low. Then let's build it, all of it. She nodded, eyes glistening. I've already talked to my board. The change takes effect in March. Are you serious? She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. And I booked us a trip, just us, 2 days after Valentine's. He opened the envelope and blinked. Paris. Every chef deserves to eat his way through Paris at least once. He laughed, then kissed her hard, arms tightening around her waist. You're unreal, you know that. No, she said against his mouth. I'm just in love. The car pulled up and they climbed in, the kids already asleep in the back seat, Willow's head on Wesley's shoulder, both of them clutching tiny hearth and hand keychains the staff had gifted them. Aurora rested her head on Elijah's shoulder as they drove home. You know, the first time I saw you, I thought you were just another drop-off dad, a mystery with a worn hoodie. And I thought you were too polished to smile at someone like me. She looked up at him. Turns out we were both wrong. He kissed her forehead. Best mistake I've ever made. The weeks that followed unfolded like something out of a life neither of them had dared to imagine. The restaurant gained traction, drawing food lovers from neighboring cities. Elijah finally hired a full-time sous chef, giving him time to breathe, to be present. Aurora began mentoring young women in finance, working fewer hours and spending more days with Willow. On Valentine's Day, the restaurant closed early. Elijah led Aurora to the rooftop of the building, where a long linen-draped table stood beneath a canopy of string lights. A musician played soft acoustic guitar, and the skyline glowed in the distance. I thought we were leaving for Paris tomorrow, she said, breath catching as she took in the scene. We are, he said, pulling out her chair. But tonight's just for us. As they finished their meal, grilled duck with fig glaze and roasted root vegetables, he stood, took a deep breath, and pulled a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Aurora's eyes widened. This isn't about promises, he said, dropping to one knee. This is about truth, about choosing you every single day because you make life feel like something I never thought I'd have again. She covered her mouth, heart thudding. I don't need perfect, I just need you. So if you'll have me, I'd really love to call you my wife. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. I thought you'd never ask. He slid the ring on her finger, a sleek, understated band with a single pear-shaped diamond, and stood to kiss her as the city hummed around them. They married 3 months later in a garden behind the restaurant, surrounded by friends, family, and the staff who had become part of their story. Wesley walked Aurora down the aisle, proudly wearing a miniature tux, and Willow scattered petals with a concentration that made everyone smile. Elijah didn't cry until Aurora reached him, her hand finding his, her eyes steady and full of everything they'd built. After the vows were spoken and the cheers had faded, they danced under the stars, the kids twirling beside them, laughter floating into the night. And somewhere between the music and the whispered I love yous, the world finally made sense, not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs. Forever.